Institutions within America continue to cave to cultural poisons that do nothing more than subvert our meaning of how things should be and our meaning of how the world is. And Adidas is a perfect example of that very phenomenon continuing in everyday life. Adidas recently came under attack, my friends, for presenting what appears to be a biological man in a women's swimsuit on their channels. I'll actually give you guys a video of that right now. Now, this is a part of Adidas's Let Love Be Your Legacy collection and campaign, which is going to be wrapping up for Pride Month, which is basically just one big corporate advertisement orgy that is presented as an act of benevolence, when in all reality, it panders to the worst of the worst and the lowest of the low of our instincts as a human being to associate pride with this sort of all-encompassing sense of identity, and not with achievement and merit and the perseverance of the soul, things that are actually merit pride. No. We'll just bind it up with all this identity and degeneracy. That's a different matter for a different day. This is a part of Adidas's Pride Month entire endeavor. And Adidas said the following about this incident. They said that in creating this collection, I had a strong impulse to speak to my inner self and express to the world how LGBTQ plus allyship can create a legacy of love. This is the person who Adidas worked with, Rich Menassie, who had designed these swimsuits. He goes on to say, unifying these themes together through my own visual language and Adidas's iconic performance in lifestyle pieces is a powerful combination, making the collection of a symbol for self-acceptance and LGBTQ plus advocacy. My hope is that this inspires LGBTQ plus allies to speak up for the queer people they love and not let them fight for acceptance alone. Now, Athlete Alley, which worked with Adidas, made the following statement. They said, together with Adidas, our goal is to drive inclusivity in sport, supporting student athletes from the LGBTQI plus and their allies to push for fair access and safe participation in sport. Through our partnership, we've created more affirming athletic spaces to celebrate the community across sexual orientations, gender identities, and gender expressions. So, it is absolutely no secret, my friends, what is transpiring. What is transpiring before your eyes is a subversive political agenda masquerading under the mask of benevolence, like I talked about before. Now, many people have said that by doing this, Adidas is going against women and Adidas is erasing women, which I believe, by the way, is a correct response. It is a morally righteous response, and it is probably true. Having said that, that is simply where a lot of people stop with their analysis. See, we live in a society of identification without implementation. Many of us will identify a problem and we will react emotionally or in a knee-jerk fashion to that problem, but we will not actually examine the problem in its constituent parts to understand its nature and to understand what produces that problem. Or if we do understand or try to understand what produces that problem, we will settle on simplified explanations of broader phenomenon that it would pay us to spend a little bit more brain power to understand. There are several principles and concepts at play with this foul exhibition by Adidas, this political agenda masquerading once again under the banner of benevolence when it is everything but. One of these principles is the fact that distinction has become weaponized. Distinction, my friends, is how all of us, by virtue of being human beings, understand the world. We separate different objects in nature from each other. A tree is not the same thing as a rock. We separate different people from each other, right? Fat people, old people, and skinny people, healthy people, unhealthy people. Not to make value judgments, but as a matter of statistical categories to understand particular characteristics of what these people have. If man could not distinguish from one thing to another, he would not be able to understand the nature of the world. He would not be able to also render any reasonable judgments by virtue of him being in perpetually ignorance of a distinction. The distinction, for example, within logic between categories, between arguments, between premises, between conclusions, all come together to create the basis for communication. Language is actually a practice in distinction. Language is divided between so many different parts. You have grammar, you have speaking. Without distinction, meaning is non-existent. The distinction between man and woman is another powerful example of the importance of distinction to man's understanding of the world. We understand that women have a feature biologically that men, by virtue of their existence, just do not have. We understand that women are led by different impulses and that men are not led by, and vice versa. We understand that women and men tend to have different habits in both social life and economic life than men do, and vice versa. We understand so many different things, and this is not solely because of their sex or their chemicals or their physiology. I am not a determinist. I believe very much in free will. But this is because of a confluence of factors within the human being that you can only understand through, you guessed it, distinction. But now, the image of a woman, the existence of women, are weaponized by people who wish to push so-called inclusivity under this broader frame of subjectivity that is weaponized to deliver forth a narrow political agenda. And thus we are seeing here, my friends, the Hegelian dialectic in full force. Many of you may not be familiar with this, so I'll explain this very simple. Problem, reaction, solution. First, there is a problem that arises. This problem is oftentimes contrived by the people who are trying to provoke a particular thing to happen. Then there is a reaction, and this reaction is used to justify what the person in power, what the schemer wishes to do, which is the solution. So the problem that Adidas puts here is that LGBTQ plus people, you saw the quote, are under attack in sports. Well, this is actually a contrived problem because gay people, bisexual people, and lesbians are not under attack in sports, at least not in America. Perhaps other parts of the country, but at least not in America, which is where Adidas is focusing on. What is under attack, however, is subverting the standards of fairness, true equity, equity as Lord Keynes, the natural law theorist, meant it, equity as was meant in the 16th and 17th century, true equity, subverting rules of fairness to set forth people who do not, under those rules of fairness, actually qualify to be in those sports. What is objected to is having biological men who have transitioned over to women and have taken extreme amounts of testosterone from being able to dominate and ruin sports full of physiologically disadvantaged women in a comparative sense. That's what's being objected to. But the substance of the distinction no longer matters. When you weaponize someone's differences, you are able to reduce them to a caricature, reduce them to this very simplified idea, and then use this very simplified idea to deliver for the political agenda. That's what we're seeing here. The assault on distinction has been the hallmark of leftist minds, of woke minds, of postmodern minds in our modern era, and it is impacting our ability to see things clearly. It clouds our judgment. And of course, the dialectic reinforces this attack on distinction and allows good, well-meaning people who may not have the language or the ability to explain these things to get sucked into these fights in the name of benevolence. Benevolence is one of the most abused and misused emotions and affections within the human nature. Now, when distinction becomes weaponized, it becomes a matter of utility, not understanding. So why would we want to understand what a woman is? Why would we want to understand what it actually means to be a particular sex if everything is a matter of utility, if that does not actually benefit the goal I'm seeking to carry out as this hypothetical political actor? Distinction is important and must be preserved by anyone who wishes to preserve objective meaning. Now, we also see something else here, and I'll close on this note. The cult of expression. You saw in those statements that expression is mentioned several times as a moral basis, as an ethos for what Adidas is doing. Now, I'll say this. I most certainly believe in expression. Freedom of expression is one of the ways that man reckons with the world around him, and by reckoning with the world around him, gains a fundamental understanding of how things work, and then from gaining a fundamental understanding of how things work, translates that understanding into political, social, and other areas of life that will allow him to have informed and wise judgment. If man cannot reckon with his world, he cannot be informed, nor can he be wise on any matter under the sun, which is why we see so much chaos, because we have a world of ignorance, of a society with a mass psychosis of ignorance that is sort of encouraged in their ignorance by ideas like this. But so expression is held to be this value that is bigger than the truth. As much as I think expression is important, my friends, your personal expression is little in the face of what is true. In fact, your personal expression is indeed so intimate and personal to you that it should only be confined to you. For example, I express myself by reading philosophy and coming on here and doing these videos that may bore some of you, may enlighten some of you. I don't know. My numbers would say bore some of you, but I don't know. But I come over here and I do these videos. It's a form of expression. Would I expect Tom or Joe, I'm naming random people down the road who work on a farm, to do the same thing? No. I would expect them to express themselves through their brilliant abilities in agriculture and tilling and their knowledge of mechanics, things which I don't have myself. Expression is the broad tapestry that brings together distinction and allows man to understand his world. But when you make expression a moral value, insofar as you use it as a yardstick by which to measure what is true and what is not true, you have descended into nihilism, because nothing has objective meaning anymore. It is all a matter of fancy. It is all a matter of taste. And this cult of expression, this cult of, I should say, impoverished expression, to distinguish it from actual expression, this cult of impoverished expression, which has permeated to the left, has overtaken these corporations, has given us a wrong sense of right and wrong in society. Morals, ethics are objective. They exist outside of human society, but they are the basis of human society. They are not amendable or editable, it's not even a word, I don't think, to our own desires. But when expression, individual expression, personal expression, becomes more important than grander truths, you can justify a subjective understanding of the world. This is where intersectionality comes in. This is why people cast themselves as members of collectives and not individuals. This is why people have fundamentally flawed ideas of what it means to be certain things. This is why people oftentimes attack and subvert norms, calling them oppressive, because they believe that anything that restricts their ability to have to interpret the world in their fancy, well, that thing is oppressive. It's wrong. No, it's liberating. Just like distinction, man needs distinction to understand the world. Without restriction, man cannot act in the world. If none of us had limits, I can't even conceptualize or conceive of what that would mean. We wouldn't be able to have society. If limits didn't exist in a moral sense, you could kill anyone, you could do whatever you want to anybody, and there'd be no recourse. And in a world like that, you can't have society. You can't have any kind of coherent living. Life has limits. We live, we die. We have stamina. We run out of stamina, we get tired. We have to eat. We don't eat, we die. There are limits. Limitations are endemic to nature. They're endemic to everything. They're the natural order of things and the moral order of things. But in a world where expression is a value, and it is the only value, limitations don't matter. What you believe matters. And beliefs, like the imagination, can be stretched to such irrational and such insane lengths to justify almost anything and everything. What we see with Adidas, my friends, is not merely an attack on women, although it is. It's an attack on distinction. It's an attack on reason. It's an attack on the moral order of the universe. It's an attack on the proper understanding of things. It's an attack on limitations. And it is fundamentally an assault on common sense. We ought to reject these kind of messaging tools, not because we want to preserve with traditional women being able to model in swimsuits. That's very elementary and very minor. But because we want to preserve the meaning around some of these more elementary or minor things, which have broader impact. And I believe that we all have an interest in doing that. Study philosophy. Be sure to remain enlightened. And my friends, also be sure to help me on Patreon, on Locals, christianlawson.locals.com. Comment on this video, like this video, share this video, subscribe to this channel. I love you guys so much, and please stay pensive.